The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
Happy preseason to everyone who celebrates preseason, gets excited about seeing young players, gets excited about hockey being back, and all it takes is one game, one moment from a player you might be very interested in, and you fall in love. I don't know if I'd use the word orgasmic, as someone else has said, but yeah, it's preseason, everybody.
Yeah. I mean, probably a product of where I'm at, man, in my career, but I'm not among those who gets that excited. I understand where the excitement comes from. You're seeing players now in the uniform, on the ice, in a game-like setting. But, you know, if you look around at those games, it's very uneven in terms of the strength of rosters of the teams. It's you know, it's difficult to judge what's real, what isn't. It still says September. Remember, we talked about the September sweethearts. Mm-hmm. Some of these players, I hate to say it, when the season actually is doing things that will matter, some of these players will be nowhere to be found in the NHL. But I can appreciate enthusiasm, and far be it from me on a Monday morning here to try to dampen anyone's spirits.
Me neither. This is not for me to or CJ or anyone at the SDPN to throw cold water on anyone's dreams. It's one game. And this goes the other way, too. Like, if you're really happy, like, I can think of Ottawa Senators fans who look at that Carter Jakubchuk goal from yesterday. Sick goal. Sick wheels. And we can get into that game. But remember, one game. Just like Leafs fans who look at the roster that was out against the Senators yesterday. And they're like, oh, no. 6-5 overtime loss with this roster against a bunch of AHL kids or junior kids. It's preseason. It's okay. Everyone take a deep breath. You're probably hearing this in the middle of a Monday, probably on your lunch break at work. Let's just take a minute to meditate a little bit. Just breathe. It's okay.
The funny thing about that is I'm pretty sure the Sens showed up at Scotiabank Arena thinking, uh-oh, what do we get into here? Because only because the Leafs literally dressed virtually pretty close to what will be their NHL team. You know, probably a couple players missing, but for all intents and purposes, it was what the Leafs will be in terms of the players, not necessarily in terms of the style of play in their first preseason game. And you know, Ottawa brought a more AHL heavy lineup, some younger players and the like. So just goes to show you who knows what you're going to get. It's 6-5 game. You know, it's probably pretty entertaining, I guess, if you were at the game, because lots of goals and, you know, there's some back and forth action, a little overtime. So, yeah, you're right. Jakubchuk's goal, like, you should get excited about young players for the organization.
Absolutely, you should. Because,
you know, it's going to take some time probably before he's truly making an impact for the Senators, but you want to see those players. You know, I can appreciate that. I think it's more maybe the in-between prospects, like some of the prospects that probably aren't going to amount to becoming an impactful NHLer. Sometimes those guys get overhyped in that environment.
For sure. I think from fans, you definitely want to see those flashes. For me, as someone who's at a point now where you're looking at a team and you're trying to be objective, for a young player, for me to really look at them and be like, all right, like, I'm going to get excited about them in my writing, they have to do it on a consistent basis. Like, if we go through a whole preseason and insert prospect here is just undeniably good on a consistent basis, then I think it's so much easier for me to get excited. Maybe it's because, like, I've tried to kill the fan in me, I guess, but, like, that's at least how I see it with preseason sometimes. But I just look at fans getting excited. Sometimes I'm a little jealous that, like, I can't do that anymore for hockey, but, like, yeah, that's just exercise a little bit of caution, I think, is what the opening theme is. We could get into a little bit more with this game, this Leafs Sens game from yesterday. It was very back and forth. We should start with Max Pacioretty, who is on a PTO, but maybe that's just in name only. And I'm sure after his performance yesterday, he looks like he could fit with this roster.
For sure. And, you know, that's something that I'm sure is encouraging to Leafs management, obviously to Max Pacioretty himself, who, you know, at age 35 does find himself in the battle for a job. I mean, you know, it's been widely said, reported, and there's certainly truth to it, that I think there was an understanding he was likely to be on the team, that by coming to camp on a PTO, he gives the Leafs the flexibility to figure out some other things with their roster before locking in his exact salary. Zach Aston Reese did this in Leafs camp 2 years ago, kind of came to camp knowing he had a job. And then the last day he signed a contract for a very specific amount of money that was done with salary cap purposes. It wouldn't surprise me now if we see the same with Pacioretty. But, the truth is, if he had to come into camp and, not been looking like he could still play, I'm not sure that there still would be that contract. But, fortunately for him, that hasn't been the case so far. Probably more important than the 2 goals and, 6 shots on net, things that you're going to want to see. I mean, if Pacioretty is going to have a role on this Leafs team, obviously, they're going to want to use him at least in somewhat of an offensive role. It might be on the third line that starts a lot of shifts in the offensive zone. I don't necessarily mean he's going to be, playing alongside Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner this year, but, is the fact that he said he feels so good. And, he had 2 significant Achilles injuries, has traveled around the world literally, to get the best medical advice he can on his recovery from those injuries. In fact, he had the second Achilles surgery in Finland, which is a little unusual for an NHL player, but it was at a doctor, the foremost of performing those types of procedures. In June of this year, when Max was working out, he had some doubts about whether, he would be able to extend his career at that point. He just wasn't seeing the kind of performance in the gym he thought he needed. But, over the course of the summer, he's able to push through and gets to a stage now where, we're not going to describe him as fast because I don't think that was ever truly his game. But,
no.
Certainly at least to start. And again, we're going to have to watch this. I don't want to get too far out of myself after the way I started this off. But, looks to me like he can at least hang to start with his camp. And again, he told the reporters that he actually feels better than he thought he would on the ice. And so, this will be one of the big decisions, we'll call it, in Leafs camp is, let's assume he gets the job. What's the fallout? Where does Nick Robertson fit? Nick Robertson notably was not among the players who dressed for the exhibition game on Sunday night. There's still some things to be worked out, but I will say I'm not going to jump ahead. Everyone's going to want to jump ahead. There's still 5 more Leafs preseason games. And lots more practices. And unfortunately, as you've seen around the league, injuries are a part of camp. So let's just see where everybody's at before saying who makes a team and who doesn't. But really strong start for Pacioretty. And it certainly feels like he'll be on the team as long as sort of the level you've seen so far continues.
And we should give some credit to the Senators as well, even if I know the Leafs contingent listening might groan a little bit at the start, but the fact that the Senators dressed the roster that they did, but still got some production out of guys like Stephen Holiday and Cole Reinhardt having himself a game as well, still really good for a roster that wasn't expected to hold up compared to this Leafs team.
Sure, and it's some players on their side that are kind of fighting. Maybe the Sens' fourth line or bottom 6 looks like there's some jobs available. You got Jan Jenik, putting up some points in that game. Zach McEwen made some plays. Even old friend Nikolai Kulemin out there on his own professional tryout at age 38. His probably a little bit more of a long shot tryout than what you're seeing from Pacioretty, but he was part of the action in the game. And it's hard to know what to read into it, but I think you can say that there were certainly lots of players on the Sens side that don't know how many games they'll get, that are trying to make whatever impression they can. And, full credit to them. They, the first period, I don't know what the shots ended up being, but it was 12-1 at one point. And so it was pretty one-sided in terms of Ottawa controlling that part of the ice. And, It's preseason though, man.
It's one game. I know.
You're trying to goad me into this. I appreciate it.
No. Here's the thing. I'm in this too. Like, it is what it is. It's preseason. It's one game. But yeah, we still got to talk about it. I ended up staying up after that Leafs game, and I watched a bit of the Flames Kraken preseason game, and a bit of what you were talking about earlier about, like, there's some guys in between. There's a few guys on the Flames who are trying to fight for spots and at least trying to provide that flash too. Just like guys like Sam Honzek who are trying to play, and I liked what he did yesterday. Matthew Coronado's a guy who right now, at least in our market, like, he looks like a guy who's on the outside looking in. He was a first round pick a couple years ago. He played really well against Seattle. just thinking of some other guys who played well in that game too. Just a lot of like Adam Klapka as well, who could be playing for a fourth line spot this year. There's a lot of that. You want to see those flashes in guys. It's just having it on a consistent basis. But yes, it's preseason.
Well, I'll tell you what was cool. Macklin Celebrini scored last night for San Jose. Obviously the first overall pick. I mean, if you're in that market or you're a fan of that team, every fan is interested in their prospect. When your prospect was selected first overall, I think that there's even a little bit more interest there. And, he started well. I know he showed pretty well in the rookie events that the Sharks were part of. The one game he played, and then to score there. I mean, he's going to be part of the team. That was the nature. He signed to leave college. He signed with the Sharks, and lives with Joe Thornton, and is going to be a member of the Sharks this year. But it doesn't mean it's going to be smooth sailing necessarily. But good for him to get on the board and maybe relieve any little pressure that he might have in the back of his mind about making an impact early in the year.
It was a nice shot too. Mm-hmm. It was a real nice shot from Macklin Celebrini. It's good to see the kids show out, man. Really good to see that from him. Anything else you might have noticed from this weekend?
Not really. I probably watched more football yesterday than hockey.
Oh, I watched a little bit of football myself.
I didn't necessarily enjoy the football because you can know which team I was mainly focused on. But we're all pacing ourselves as we get going here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. If that's really it for preseason talk, just wondering if there's any other rumblings before I get to a whole bunch of questions we got in Ask CJ. We got a whole bunch coming off of Twitter and Discord as well.
Well, I mean, I think, look, it's worth pointing out here, we're now into another week after the start of camps last week, and Jeremy Swayman remains unsigned by the Bruins. I think that pretty notable. And this was kind of the danger that I was trying to highlight as we got up to camp is it's not a true deadline. Obviously you don't have to sign a player at the start of camp, but a lot of the other deals did get done either a day or two before camp, maybe, a couple, in the case of Moritz Seider was a day or two after camp started, but there's obviously a push to get players in there at that time. Now you get into a week away and you can just see how, what is to compel one side or the other to make a big change in their stance. I suppose the start of the regular season could be the next kind of deadline, but obviously if we get that far and Swayman hasn't signed, I mean, it's that's a difficult spot for him to be in, just not having had the same opportunities to ramp up his game and for the team to be in. So, I think we'd be remiss even if there's not a strong, tangible update to provide, because from what I can gather, I don't think there's been a whole lot of movement or change in that situation to this point. But, he's not in camp, and I just feel like every day that goes by, the stakes go up just a little bit. It's like adding a little pebble to a big rock hill every day, but eventually, you're left with something. And, I'll reiterate what I said on our show Thursday. I just think that the way Don Sweeney approached that was really, it told us a lot. I mean, he had some kind of funny comments in a sense. It was, went after the Spit and Chicklets guys, but you could tell, I think there was some strain there. And, Jeremy Swayman is a proud guy, believes in himself, who saw the other side of the business with the team had him in arbitration last summer. He's got them in a particular spot, I would say, just because they don't have another number one goalie in camp. I mean, Joonas Korpisalo has played a ton of games in the league. Obviously, Boston was comfortable having him as their sort of 1B option or number 2 option this year. But, I guess we'll stay tuned here and see if there's any progress, but it just doesn't feel at this time like it's anything more than status quo.
If I'm a Bruins fan, what should my level of worry be? Should it be from 1, which is, just even keel, very cool, 5 to I want to throw up in a bag?
6, 7, maybe.
Dang. Okay. I was going 1 to 5. You want to go?
Sorry.
Above 5?
I thought you were saying 1 to 5, like middle, and then 10 was throw up in a bag. Okay.
Oh my God.
I guess I'm on a 3 to 4, like 3.5 then on a 1 to 5 scale.
That's still worrisome.
Well, I mean, I don't want to make too much of it either. If he could sign later today and be at practice.
Possible.
on Tuesday and there's still lots of time. It's just the longer it goes where there's no idea that no sense that there's been some movement and a push to get it done. I just think you get closer to your bag option you've presented just because this is a pretty important player. And it's funny because I realized the irony in this tweet irony in this statement after I started this pod by saying, it's just preseason. Well, the flip side is when your guy isn't in those preseason games, getting himself kind of acclimated to the speed and obviously as a goaltender, the shots and everything, all the movement in front of him, I don't even know. I can't think of a case as a goaltender. Can you think of anything like this where goaltenders miss time? It's mostly been skaters.
Not immediately.
William Nylander being the most famous because he went right to the December 1st deadline, but there's been some other skaters that have missed time. And, in Nylander's case, he never got back up to speed and was quite open about how tough it was. But I don't even know how you ease a goalie back in. At least a skater, if he hasn't played, you could sort of put him down and just play him sparing shifts and kind of ease him in that way. But a goalie's either in or he's out. Anyway, I'll refuse from like spiraling into this doom scroll here on what this could be. But, Cole Perfetti is also unsigned in Winnipeg too. So there's two notable RFA situations that are still to be taken care of. But I think the Swayman one is the most notable with respect to Perfetti is just because he's expected to be a frontline, play 50 plus games for the Bruins, help them get back to the playoffs and go on a run type of player. And well, I'm not saying that's not going to happen as long as his immediate future kind of hangs in the balance, it's hard not to just think of all the days that are gone by. I mean, the hardest conditioning parts of camp, believe it or not, Julian, are already over, right? Most teams start with 2 or 3 hard days of practices and, not everyone does that big rope skate like John Tortorella is doing in Philadelphia rather. But, that's the hard days where and it might not apply to a goalie quite to the same degree, but I'm just saying now it's the rubber's hitting the road slowly every day that Swayman's unsigned, I think the concern meter grows a little bit in Boston.
For what it's worth, you have mentioned in the past that all it takes is something to swing the right way and then a deal gets done. I think of last week's episode where we weren't sure where we were going to be at with Moritz Seider. And then within a couple hours of our episode dropping, I believe a deal got done with him. So,
right. But I didn't mention the path to a deal had appeared at that point. We didn't have the deal yet. But, that's where I said that they'd stop focusing on an 8-year deal. They were going to go to 6 or 7. It ended up being 7 to keep his cap hit at a certain level that the Red Wings internally identified as important. I don't know what the path to the deal is yet for Swayman. I mean, he still wants, of course, to be among the best paid goalies in the league. They're trying to say, look, we need you to prove it a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more of a stepping stool approach. Maybe do something shorter might be the answer. And then we'll, hit a home run on your next deal when you've had 2 or 3 seasons as our number one unquestioned goalie under your belt. I don't know how you bridge that gap other than one side or the other making a meaningful move. It could happen today. Who knows? Don Sweeney might wake up and drive, to his house or something. I mean, that's the way it's happened in the past. I do remember sometimes it's just a matter of like almost like making a gesture and saying like, okay, we got to get this solved. Like we both want the same thing. We want you here. You want to be here. Let's find a path. But I just don't know if that path has emerged just yet. Our colleague at The Athletic, Fluto Shinzawa, has talked a little bit about a 4-year deal, perhaps sort of offering a bit of a bridge between the two ideas. Something 7.5 million. It makes some sense, but there's no evidence that the two sides at the table have decided that makes sense. And that's more important than those of us on the outside trying to piece together the solution.
Okay. Good update. Anything else before I get to questions?
No, I think that's good. Let them fly.
This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by Shopify. Gone are the days where you only had to get up out of your bed and walk into a brick and mortar store to get what you want. Now, from the comfort of your own home, you can buy stuff online, and there's a very good chance you have to use Shopify to get it. And if you have a business and you want to take it to the next level, you should upgrade your business and get the same checkout that we have at the SDPN with Shopify. Sign up with your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Johnston. All lowercase. Shopify.com/Johnston to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Johnston.
Johnston.
Let's do it. Thank you to everyone who sent them on the app formerly known as Twitter and on our Discord. From Matt, are the Tampa Bay Lightning considered to be scrappy underdogs among the top teams?
It's hard to call Tampa ever an underdog, is it?
Yeah, I feel that too, right? Because they have that pedigree. They might not be as good, but like...
I mean, in recent memory, they went to 3 state cup finals. 20, 21, and 22. Now, I realize some of those years people don't want to remember because it was the pandemic days, but still, Tampa has been pretty amazing. Now, look at their roster is even more turned over than the players that were the heartbeat of those teams. Even more of them are gone. Most notably, Steven Stamkos. We didn't mention him in the preseason action. He scored a goal.
Scored against Florida.
A one-timer goal that Lightning fans will be familiar with. That looked exactly like a goal he scored in the past for Tampa, but now in the nice yellow and white unis. I don't know if they're a scrappy underdog. I still think Andrei Vasilevsky for me is like the key to the operation. Just because, last year he went through health challenges, didn't start the season until November. Didn't ever get back up to his level. I mean, look, hey, there's a Swayman comparison. That was a goaltender that had to jump in midstream. Unfortunately, it's not a comparison anyone will want to hear if Swayman ends up missing time because, Vasilevsky just wasn't himself last year by the numbers, his worst performance as an NHL goaltender. And I think it's understandable and can be explained, but was that a blip? Is that something he can get move beyond? Or if not, because I think for all obviously at various times when you're following those great Tampa teams, you're talking about Braden Point, you're talking about Kucherov, you're talking about Victor Hedman, won the one Conn Smythe in 2020. Obviously Stamkos. There's just so many players on that team that got attention. But I think at times it was overlooked how important Vasilevsky. He was like their secret sauce. I feel like he was like throughout it all. He helped them win a lot of 2-1 games. If you go back and look at those playoff runs, they won like 2-1 and 1-0 games sometimes as they got through those years. And, you don't do that without some steady goaltending. So I'm not going to call them an underdog. But I do think that they're a team that I'm not quite sure what we're going to get. I'm not sure if there is going to be a Stamkos hangover. I'm not sure how Jake Gensel will look on that team. I think over time, he signed a long-term deal. He'll be a great player for them, but it might not happen the day one of the season. And then the biggest question I have is Vasilevsky back up to being one of the best goalies, if not the best goalie in the world? And if not, maybe they're going to be in a fight to make the playoffs.
Okay. From Goalie Friend, does Vancouver now have the best goalie trio in the league? This is obviously after Kevin Lankinen signed.
I like the players. I'm still just wondering, we didn't actually touch on Demko. We told you he was going to speak, but what he said was very open-ended. I mean, I give him credit. He came out and shared what he could and talked about what he's been through and, but it didn't fill me with confidence just about when you're going to see him again or what he's going to be at. I mean, there's a degree to his recovery that is unknown even to him and to the doctors. And so I certainly like Vancouver's goaltending. I think it makes sense to go sign Lankinen. Possibility we discussed a few times on the pod, but who's playing most of the games is my question. Goaltending is not a position where you need 5 great ones. You need one that's really reliable, really healthy, and plays a lot, and a good second option. But sometimes having a lot of good goalies is not it becomes a problem you don't want to have because it's like, who do you start? Usually tells you there's an injury situation there. So, I'm not down on Vancouver's goaltending. I'm just more, I want to wait and see what happens with Demko because I think he's the key to the puzzle.
2 quick ones for you. From Decky, what is CJ's routine to stay healthy enough to run? I understand it's not medical advice, just curious, given his impressive streak.
Not medical advice. I have no explanation, honestly. I don't even stretch. I'm sorry for anyone out there that's probably thinks I'm nuts.
What? You don't stretch?
No.
Aren't you supposed to stretch every day if you're over 40?
If you are, I didn't get the memo. It's not like no one told me that. I just turned 40 one day and no one told me.
You don't stretch?
No. So I just literally put on my running shorts and go for a run and then come. That's it. I mean, it's It defies some logic, I think. But to be fair, this is one thing I do know. There are many, many people out there that have like 20 and 30 and even 40-year run streaks, like where they haven't missed a day. And so
40?
I'm at 4.5 years, essentially, coming up on almost exactly 4.5 years. So I'm way behind those. But like, I guess it is possible. But at the same time, I also know people that are on the surface much fitter than I am that, run and then get injuries, get issues that would prevent them from running every single day. So I don't have a good explanation for it other than I'm lucky enough to feel good. I mean, some days my legs are a bit tired. I think that stands to reason, but in general, like I don't feel any pain and knock wood, I haven't had any issues that have kept me from running, at least during the streak.
Okay. Last one for you from Congo Red. Top 3 burger restaurants.
Ooh, I like a good burger.
You and I both.
McDonald's, Wendy's, A&W.
Wait.
I was just trying to slip it by you.
Good Lord. Anyway.
I mean, Burgers Priest is pretty good. I guess we could do the US ones too.
Yeah, I think this is open-ended enough where you could go across the map.
It's funny, like, do people really sit around? Like, this is a serious question. Do people sit around and have a ranking of everything in their life just like ready to go? Like, I don't rank things.
Sometimes,
ever.
yeah.
It's only on this pod when I'm like forced to rank things. Like, who ranks things?
People do. People think about ranking stuff like all the time. Like, could be food, could be music, could be clothing brands sometimes. That happens.
Right. Like, I like In-N-Out, but I don't know if it would be on my top 3.
I like In-N-Out too. Would you rather In-N-Out or Shake Shack?
I don't think I've ever had a Shake Shack burger.
Ooh, isn't there supposed to be one in Toronto?
I'm sure there is, but that would require me to leave my house and go buy one.
That's fair. That's fair. I think it's perfectly rated In-N-Out. I know people say it's overrated. I think it's perfectly fine.
Well, part of it for me too is it's like always exciting if you get somewhere, i.e. usually California, where they have an In-N-Out. It means you're like in California and like you're somewhere, which I like to be. So it's like, it's kind of part of the whole experience. It's like, oh yeah, I can get In-N-Out while I'm here. Cause I can say certainly in the years I was traveling, as a media member covering the Leafs, anytime I was in LA or Anaheim, like Jonas Siegel and I would be like going out of our way to make sure we got an In-N-Out burger, during that trip. There's a burger joint in Toronto called Rudy. I would recommend you try next time you're in town too.
Okay.
They're very good, but I don't have your top 3. I'm sorry. My brain can't do it.
It's okay. It's okay. You know why it's okay, CJ? It's preseason. We're not in regular season form yet. At least with ranking burger joints.
If you're looking for a show though, I'd say watch Bad Monkey. I've been enjoying Bad Monkey.
Bad Monkey.
Vince Vaughn. It's hilarious.
Okay. All right. I'll add that to. I gotta say, I get pretty sloppy with watching. Like, is it a funny show?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm a
it's
lot
sort
easier
of,
with watching comedy shows versus like dramatic, depressing stuff.
It's definitely not depressing. It's a bit of dark humor, but like it's funny. Like it doesn't take itself too seriously. I'll say that.
All right. People rank TV shows too. You don't have like a TV show ranking?
Don't even.
I
gave you one show. I gave you one rank. There's one to watch.
All right. Thank you everyone for all our questions today. Oh my God. Let's get out of here before we get a copyright strike, everybody. Thank you for listening to CJ's show. We'll be back later this week. It's preseason, for the love of God.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.